Griffin Madsen leaned forward in the dim glow of the console light, sweat clinging to his brow despite the cold. He didn't say a word, not to me, not to anyone. Just sat there, eyes locked on the empty black of deep space outside the viewport. Then, without warning, he whispered something. I couldn't make it out. I was just outside the threshold of the cockpit, coffee going cold in my hands. But the way his breath caught after, that haunted exhale like he'd seen something ancient. That was the last time any of us saw him. No alarms, no flash of light, just gone. No exit logs, no radio signal, not even a thermal echo. Griffin Madsen vanished right there in front of me, in a sealed cabin, aboard a ship that wasn't supposed to exist. You're watching this because something inside you knows. Knows that the story you've been told, the clean, corporate-friendly version of humanity's first contact is missing something. Not a gap, a wound, a hole where truth was surgically removed. They made it all look like a joke. Bright aliens, shiny treaties, headlines like Galactic Welcome Party. They laughed at us, called us soft, primitive, predictable. But they never asked the question, never dared to ask. What if we chose to be underestimated? What if the most fragile species in the known galaxy had teeth they'd never seen before? It didn't begin with a war. It began with a voice. 3 months before Griffin disappeared, I caught a sound on the communications relay during routine calibration, a child's voice laughing. That might not sound like much, but there were no families aboard. Not on the Vesper. I ran diagnostics, clean. I looped the audio, trying to prove I was wrong. But each time it played, something deeper in me twisted. Because the voice, she said my name. My full name. First, middle, last. The way my grandmother used to just before she'd die 4 decades ago. And then, under that sweet giggle, one word cut through like a blade drawn slow across bone. Decloak. That word wasn't in any Earth language. Not then. But the translators lit up like they'd heard something divine. Now listen, this story is not a tale of alien conquest or humanity's noble resistance. That's the version they give you in the recruitment vids. This is what they scrubbed from the records. This is what Griffin knew, what he saw that no one else dared look at. Because when the ship finally decloaked in Earth orbit, it wasn't ours, it wasn't theirs either. And it wasn't empty. There was something already inside, and now it knows your name. When the Vesper decloaked, I remember the silence, thick and suffocating, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. The blackness outside that viewport should have been dotted with stars, distant suns, familiar constellations. Instead, it was a flat, empty void, like the world itself had been erased. Griffin was gone, but the ship felt different. The air was heavier. The hum of the engines, deeper, resonating somewhere inside your bones. I tried to tell myself it was exhaustion, or the slow creep of isolation pressing down after months on patrol in deep space. But something gnawed at me, and not just the growing silence left by Griffin's absence. I found the audio logs, or rather what remained of them. On the surface, they were a perfect record. Calm voices, routine transmissions, nothing unusual. But when I listened closer, something was off. Subtle glitches, tiny fractures in the static, like a whisper, buried beneath a whisper. At first, I chalked it up to interference, the inevitable degradation of data over time. But then I heard it. A phrase that no one had said aloud during any official briefing. A phrase that wasn't supposed to exist. Trust no one, the voice said, cracked and barely audible, as if torn from another dimension. And the strangest part? The voice sounded exactly like Griffin. I rewound and replayed the files dozens of times, feeling the tight coil of dread in my chest grow tighter with every listen. But what struck me most wasn't the voice itself. It was the sudden flicker in my own memories. Little details I was sure I remembered had slipped away. Faces I thought I knew, conversations I swore happened. Even entire hours of the mission log vanished, like smoke through my fingers. I started keeping a journal, desperate to trap reality before it dissolved. But sometimes I'd find entries I never wrote, notes I couldn't explain, personal reflections that didn't belong to me, or didn't seem to. And then there was Helen. She showed up unannounced, her dark hair tangled, eyes too bright like she hadn't slept for days. "You're seeing it too, aren't you?" she said one evening, voice barely above a whisper, eyes darting like a hunted animal. Helen was supposed to be on a different assignment, a communications officer transferred from Houston months before. Yet there she was, sitting across from me like some half-remembered ghost. "I don't know what's real anymore," I confessed, feeling the walls of the small quarters close in. Maybe Griffin never disappeared. Maybe none of this happened. Helen shook her head slowly, the faintest smile flickering and vanishing like a dying ember. "That's what they want you to think, that you're losing your mind. But it's not you, it's the ship. It's something in the ship." She paused, eyes fixed on the ceiling like trying to see past it, into some shadow realm. "You remember the story about the old miners in the Appalachians, how they'd vanish in the caves, but the echoes of their voices stayed behind. The truth behind what no one tells you is this: some places don't just hold memory, they trap." Derisi, her words unsettled me more than the flickering lights or the static in the comms, because Helen's presence, her very certainty, was unnerving. Sometimes she'd disappear for hours, then reappear with stories that contradicted everything we'd documented. She claimed the Vesper was never alone, that there was a passenger we'd never seen, someone who whispered secrets no human should hear. But when I asked for proof, her eyes would cloud and she'd change the subject like it was dangerous just to speak aloud. I started doubting her, doubting myself. Was Helen a hallucination born from isolation and grief? Was she a symptom of the same paranoia clawing its way into my mind? Or worse, was she a part of this something that had infiltrated the ship, weaving itself into our memories, erasing the line between what was real and what was nightmare? One night, alone except for the faint hum of the ship, I found a hidden recording buried deep in the archives, labeled only with a date, but no names or context. I hit play. The audio was raw, crackling with interference, but the voice was unmistakable. Griffin's, except it wasn't Griffin anymore. It was fractured, desperate. "If you hear this, trust no one. They're inside us now. The laughter you heard? It was never theirs. It's ours. We're the joke and the punchline." The message ended abruptly, replaced by the sound of frantic breathing and then silence, and then the comms sparked again. Just static at first, then a single word, clear as a bell: decloak. It was a command, a plea, or maybe a curse. The word had become a trigger, a door ajar to something too terrible to name. I felt the walls close in again, the air growing thin, and the voice in the static seemed to follow me, echoing in every shadow. My own reflection in the viewport flickered, not quite right, like a frame skipping in a broken video. And somewhere deep inside, I knew the ship was watching, waiting. But for what? Helen was gone when I woke. No sign she'd ever been there, except the faint scent of her perfume lingering like a memory, or a warning. And now the question gnaws at me every waking moment. Was Griffin ever really gone? Or did he, and everything we thought we knew, become just another whisper trapped inside the ship's cold, endless dark? The truth behind what no one tells you isn't buried in data or decoded in signals. It lives in the spaces between, the silence that screams louder than any alarm, and whatever is inside the Vesper, it's already inside me. So if you're hearing this, if somehow you're the one seeing what no one else will admit, remember one thing. Sometimes the real unsolved mystery isn't what happened out there, but what's happening right here, right now, in the shadowed corners of your own mind. And the last thing you want to do is listen too closely to the voice that calls your name, because it knows where you are, and it's waiting. The moment I thought the pieces were finally fitting together, when the jagged edges of the Vespers nightmare smoothed into a pattern I could almost recognize, it was as if the universe exhaled, letting me believe in something solid, something real. I I had found it, the hidden truth, buried beneath layers of static and erased memories. The key wasn't in the alien ship's decloak or even Griffin's disappearance, but in a file no one was supposed to find, deep in the ship's encrypted archives, a fragment of what they called the Echo Protocol. It wasn't just a protocol, it was a confession, or maybe a warning, dressed up in cold, bureaucratic language. Something so raw it felt like peeling back a scar on my own mind. The recording played, grainy and distorted, but clear enough. A voice, older than Griffin's, calm and steady. A scientist named Dr. Evelyn Harrow, who'd worked on a secret program during the early days of the mission. Her voice detailed the experiments conducted to study a strange phenomenon they'd encountered deep in the asteroid belt, a place where communications dropped, compasses spun, and crews reported hearing voices not their own. The Echo Protocol was the team's desperate attempt to capture the echoes, fragments of consciousness, memories, even emotions, that had apparently seeped into the ship's systems. It was an archive meant to trap something dangerous, a remnant of a presence they could never fully understand, much less control. Listening to Harrow's voice, something shifted inside me. The sensation was familiar, like waking from a dream. You didn't know you'd had, but somehow lived through. My chest tightened with the weight of something I'd buried long ago. There was a moment, a memory flickering just beyond reach, of a night in my childhood when the air had turned cold without reason, and a voice whispered my name in a tone so tender and terrible, it made me freeze. I never told anyone about that night. How could I? The memory felt like a glitch in my own history, like a scratch in the tape of my life that no one wanted me to rewind. And yet there it was, the missing link between the ancient whispers in space and the voice that had spoken through Griffin, through the ship, through me. I thought I understood what had been watching all along. Not an alien invader, but something more subtle, more sinister. A force that didn't need to attack because it had already infiltrated the most vulnerable place, the human mind. Something that twisted memory, bent perception, and fed on fear disguised as familiarity. For days, I traced every lead, every fragment of data, convinced I was finally in control, finally unmasking the invisible puppeteer pulling the strings. Helen reappeared, her eyes dull and haunted. But for once her words made sense, fitting perfectly into the puzzle instead of breaking it apart. Together, we pieced together the chilling story of the Echo Protocol's downfall, how the original crew had been swallowed by the echoes, their identities dissolving until only their voices remained, trapped in a loop of despair. But then came the detail that shattered everything. A single entry in the mission logs, dated years before our departure, showed a transmission from Earth, intercepted and redacted, that referenced a missing child named Griffin Madsen. The message was brief, a fragment of a call for help buried deep in a sea of classified files. The date matched the exact moment my Griffin disappeared, but the context was impossible. It suggested not just that he vanished on the ship, but that he had been missing long before the mission even launched. An echo, a shadow of a man who had never truly existed. I replayed the files again and again, heart pounding in disbelief. If Griffin had been missing years ago, then who was the man who whispered that word, decloak, to me in the cockpit? What if the Vesper hadn't lost a crew member, but was playing host to something else entirely? A copy, a fragment, a memory that had slipped into flesh and bone. And if that was true, then what else in my own life was a copy, a lie, a memory glitch designed to keep me trapped in this endless loop of doubt? The walls of my reality began to crumble. The voices in the ship's systems felt less like warnings and more like invitations. The hum of the engines became a pulse beating inside my own head. And the danger, the deeper force that had been watching since the beginning, was no longer a distant mystery lurking in space. It was a presence sitting quietly in the corner of the room, whispering that I was not just the witness to this story, but part of its cruel design. There was no alien fleet out there laughing at us. No stealth ship unveiling humanity's secret weapon. There was only this, an ancient, patient watcher, feeding on the fractures in our minds, turning our own memories into prisons. I looked over at the empty chair where Helen had been just moments before. The faintest trace of her perfume lingered, like a fading dream, but when I checked the logs, there was no record of her ever boarding the Vesper, no transfer, no arrival, nothing. And then I realized the truth. Every word I've spoken, every memory I've clung to, every shadow I thought I chased had been part of a story I was never meant to remember. You're not crazy, they lied to you. The mystery you've been watching unfold isn't just a tale of outer space or alien contact. It's a mirror, held up to something far older and more dangerous. Something that's been inside you all along. Now, as I sit here, heart hammering, against the silence, I know I have to ask again, with even more weight than before, what if the real story isn't out there? What if it's inside us? And if that's true, then every second you've spent watching this, every truth you thought you uncovered, might just be the first layer of a much deeper nightmare. Go back. Watch it all again. Because the question isn't whether you're seeing the truth, it's whether you ever saw anything at all. I wasn't the first to hear the whispers. And I'm certainly not the last. Somewhere, hidden beneath the endless layers of scrambled transmissions and classified files that no one wanted you to find, there are others, people like me, or maybe unlike me, who have felt the slow bleed of memory and reality twist into something unrecognizable. You think this is just my story, my unraveling on a ship lost in space? That you're watching a one-sided confession? No. You were right all along to feel like you're not alone, because somewhere in the shadows beyond the stars, others have been silently watching too. They've been waiting for someone to break the silence, to notice the signs that have been threaded through our lives like a code hidden in plain sight. It starts with those dreams, the ones you think belong only to you until you realize they aren't just dreams at all. The same flickering images, the same stuttering voices that speak in fractured phrases. Decloak, trust no one. Remember the echo. And sometimes in the flicker between sleep and waking, a symbol appears. A jagged spiral, a broken clock face, a twisted helix of light and shadow. You might have seen it in an old tattoo, graffiti on a wall, or carved into a forgotten monument during a road trip you don't remember taking. These symbols are more than coincidence. They're markers in a map only the initiated can read. And if you're watching this, you've been given the key. But that key comes with a cost. Because once you start seeing the symbols, once you hear the echoes, you begin to realize that you're not simply a spectator of the story. You're a participant, a pawn, a witness. I found a message hidden in a corrupted data file, something buried so deep I almost missed it, a sequence of numbers and letters that didn't match any known encryption. It was paired with a recording, grainy and distorted, but unmistakable. In its urgency, the voice was calm, female, with an edge of desperation that cut through the static. If you find this, you're not alone. They watch from beyond the veil. The truth is older than memory, and what you see is only a shadow of what controls you. The voice cut off abruptly, replaced by a low, humming frequency that seemed to resonate inside my skull, making my vision blur. Then there's Harper. She's the third perspective, the observer no one else acknowledges, the one who might be the only person telling the truth. I met her through a series of encrypted chat rooms buried beneath the surface web, places no one outside the conspiracy would ever find. Harper doesn't claim to be a victim or a witness. She calls herself a watcher, someone tasked with piecing together the fragments that slip through the cracks of what the government never released. She sends me found footage from 20 years ago, shaky videos captured on forgotten camcorders, showing people just like us, confused, terrified, trapped in moments where reality fractures and their own identities seem to dissolve. Faces blur and shift. Voices overlap until you can't tell what's real or fabricated. Do you see it? Harper asks in one message. The way their memories glitch before they vanish. The way the shadows fold in on themselves, swallowing whole. Lives, you're part of that too. You were never just Griffin Madsen, not really. Her words feel like a blade sliding under my skin, cold and certain. Because when I close my eyes, I don't just see myself. I see hundreds of faces staring back from the void, all lost in the same haze of fractured memories and whispered lies. The boundaries of who I am begin to unravel. I question the very nature of identity, wondering if the memories I hold are mine or borrowed, if the thoughts I think are truly my own or planted seeds of control. What if the voice in the static, the presence in the ship, the echo of Griffin, Helen, even me, are all parts of a single sprawling entity, an intelligence so vast it doesn't need to manifest in flesh to bend us to its will? What if control isn't just external but internal, a prison constructed from our own minds? The dread of losing oneself becomes a slow drip of terror that leaks into every waking moment, making every reflection suspect, every familiar face a possible stranger. Harper warns that the Watchers, whoever or whatever they are, have always been here, threading themselves through the tapestry of human experience, observing, manipulating, waiting for the right moment to claim more than whispers or shadows. Their presence is a slow rot, invisible but all-consuming, a force felt more in the pit of your stomach than seen with your eyes. The messages between those who have glimpsed the truth form a fragile web of resistance, a network of fractured souls trying to hold on to something real before it's too late. And now, as you watch this, you become part of that network. Because this isn't just a story told from one voice, it's a call, a reminder, that the real mystery isn't about what lies beyond the stars, but what has always been inside us. The question isn't if you've been watched. It's when you realize the watcher might be looking through your own eyes. So I'll leave you with this. If the symbols start to appear, if the voices in your dreams grow louder, if you feel your memories slipping like sand through fingers, remember, you were never crazy. You were right all along, and whatever watches, waits, and whispers is not done with us yet. This story isn't over. It's only just begun. There is a moment, a razor-thin sliver of time suspended between despair and clarity, when you realize that the mystery you've chased for so long is no longer about the who, the what, or even the where. It is about the why. Why this unraveling? Why these fractured memories, whispered voices, and shadows that bend and twist around your very soul? And the answer is not some alien conspiracy or hidden government plot. It is something far deeper, far more human, and yet more terrifying, because it strips away every comforting illusion you've ever held, leaving you raw, exposed, and painfully vulnerable. I sit here now, the Vesper's cold metal beneath my fingers, the hum of its systems a distant murmur in my ears, and I understand that this story is not about what happened to Griffin, or Helen, or even me. It's about what we are, what it means to be human when your memories betray you, when your identity feels like a fractured mirror, reflecting countless faces you've never met, but somehow remember. When the lines between self and other, reality and nightmare, blur so completely that you don't know who you are, or if you ever did. This force, the watcher, the echo, the presence lurking in the silence, exists because we allowed it to. Because our fear, our doubt, our loneliness create the perfect soil for it to grow. It doesn't just observe, it feeds on the cracks in our psyche, the places where we hide our pain, our regrets, the parts of ourselves we refuse to face. It is the weight of every lie we've told ourselves, every memory we've buried to avoid the unbearable truth. And now, in this moment of unbearable clarity, I must confess something I've hidden even from myself. I don't know if I'm fighting, to save my mind or to surrender it. The truth that awaits me, hidden behind the door labeled Echo Protocol, might destroy me. It might shatter everything I thought I knew about who I am, about what love, loss, and memory truly mean. But maybe, just maybe, it could save me too. Because what if this force, this presence, is not an enemy, but a mirror? A reflection of our own fractured humanity, begging us to look closer, to acknowledge the darkness we carry inside, and to find a way through it, not by denying it, but by embracing it. What if the echoes in the void are not just whispers of lost souls, but calls to awaken from the dream we've been trapped in since the beginning of time? The choice is mine. Or perhaps it's ours, woven into the very fabric of this story you're watching. To step through that door and face the unbearable light of truth, or to turn away, to cling to the comforting lies that keep the shadows at bay. Neither path promises safety. Both demand courage. And as I reach out, trembling, to make that choice, I feel the weight of every face I've seen, every voice I've heard, every memory that might not be mine. I feel the ache of loss, the sting of betrayal, and the fragile hope that beneath it all, there is still something pure and real. So here, we are on the edge of something vast and unknowable, a precipice between destruction and salvation, madness and enlightenment. And all I can do is invite you to stand beside me, to watch, to listen, and to remember that the story isn't over. Because sometimes, the most terrifying awakenings come not when the truth reveals itself, but when you realize you've been dreaming all along. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time. Remember, some truths don't want to be found.